Welcome to the Padre Podcast. This is the place where I share my heart and my mind because I am a forever student and I would like to graduate in heaven, and I hope you do too. This is episode number 6. Ain't that crazy? We've been doing this together for a little while now. And today I would like to talk about Papyrus 52, which is this tiny little fragment of the New Testament. Actually, I did a little cutout of an equivalent of the fragment. It's written on both sides, and it is from the Gospel of John, the earliest fragment of the New Testament ever to be discovered. And so Papyrus 52 is what we're going to be talking about today, which was actually published in 1935 by Colin Roberts, and it was brought to Manchester in the UK, to the Young Rylands University, by an expedition that was directed by Doctors Grenfell and Hunt, who went to Egypt and brought a bunch of manuscripts from there to the university in Manchester. And one of those fragments was this tiny little fragment, which is only 2.5 inches by 3.5. And when they studied this text that only has 114 legible letters in Greek, and after dating paleographically the text, they realized that this text belongs to the Gospel of John, is the trial of Jesus. Jesus before Pontius Pilate is the Gospel of John of the Passion of the Lord. And this text would date to years 125 to 175 AD. And if we go to the earliest date, 125 AD, this is indeed the oldest of the fragments of the New Testament that has been discovered to this day. And so of the 5,800 manuscripts that survive of the New Testament in Greek, this will be the oldest of all of them. So this is really amazing when this discovery took place and when the fragment was published after the study in 1935. So I can't wait to tell you more about this particular discovery. And of course, if eventually there is a discovery of another fragment that is older than this, meaning older than 125 AD, I'm going to make a copy of that, and it's going to be part of my Bible Museum as well. So let's talk about this text. First of all, let's read the text, okay? Because this is a very familiar text, because you have heard it in church on Good Friday. And very soon we're going to be starting the journey of Lent, and then we will end up in Holy Week. So this is what we're going to be reading in church. So the text on one side reads chapter 18 of the Gospel of John, verses 31 through 33. At this, Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves, and judge him according to your law." The Jews answered him, "We do not have the right to execute anyone," in order that the word of Jesus might be fulfilled, that he said, indicating the kind of death he would die. So Pilate went back into the praetorium and summoned Jesus and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And then there are several verses that are skipped, because then you read on the other side of the fragment. And on the other side of the fragment, you have chapter 18, verses 37 through 38. So Pilate said to Jesus, "Then are you a king?" And Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." And Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" When he had said this, he again went out to the Jews and said to them, "I find no guilt in him." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. So these portions of this text that I just read would be contained in this tiny little fragment, which would be Papyrus 52. Now, how does that work? The title of this one episode of Padre Podcast is Piece of a Puzzle, because indeed this fragment is the piece of a larger puzzle. So in order to illustrate this, I'm going to give you an idea. So first of all, here I have done a cutout of a full page in actual papyrus, so that you get an idea of what this would have looked like. So everything that survives of Papyrus 52 is just this piece. The rest of the page is gone, and this would have been written on both sides. That's why Papyrus 52 is written on both sides. But the rest of the page is completely gone. Actually, not just the rest of the page is gone. The entire manuscript is gone. All the other chapters and verses are gone. So the rest of the gospel is gone. The only thing that has survived of the entire manuscript is that tiny little piece of the puzzle. So you can imagine when these biblical scholars found that tiny little piece and they started looking at the Greek text written on both sides, they realized, first of all, that this was part of a codex, meaning that this was not a scroll, because normally the scrolls are written on one side. But since it was written on both sides, this was part of a book, and codex is the official name for a book where you can actually flip pages. And the codex format was used for the books that we used in the New Testament. The New Testament were written in codex format. Now, to illustrate this, as you know, I have written my own copy of the Gospel of John. Actually, I have it right here. And I have here separated my own page. This will be, in my manuscript, this will be the page of the trial of Jesus. So this page would be the equivalent of Papyrus 52, but obviously will be a tiny little fragment. The rest of the manuscript would be gone. In my manuscript, all of this would be the Gospel of John. The Gospel of John would be this entire thing. This whole thing would be the manuscript of John. Imagine all of that completely gone, except for that tiny little fragment. That's the magnitude of finding that tiny little fragment of Papyrus 52. Now, there are about 141 papyri that have been cataloged by number. Remember that I mentioned there are 5,800, but of those 5,800, there are 141 that have been cataloged by numbers. And those are the ones that are among the oldest ones. And among them, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 52, which is the one that I have right here. This one has been cataloged as number 52, even though it is the oldest. But when it was cataloged in that number. That doesn't mean that number 1 is the oldest. It's not, because 52 is indeed the oldest. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch and I'm going to show you a list of the New Testament papyri, because there is a wonderful resource out there that many times people just kind of talk down to it. It's actually Wikipedia. Imagine that, because it has a wonderful resource with the list of all the New Testament papyri, and in there it explains where all these resources are, because all these are real papyri that are in many important libraries all over the world, and you can actually access the pictures of these texts. I am personally very grateful that all these libraries and all these monasteries and special places can keep these fragments, because it is because of these libraries that keep these fragments that we have access to the Bible. And if it wasn't for all these important discoveries, we wouldn't have this. So stay in the line, because we are going to continue this Padre Podcast, but in a screenshot of that page, so that you can learn more about the New Testament papyri. So here we are in the Wikipedia page of the New Testament papyri. It has the list. We start with Papyrus 1, which is from the Gospel of Matthew, from years 200 to 300. It is the page of the beginning of the Gospel of Matthew. Then it continues, Papyrus 2, Papyrus 3, 4, 5, and it keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. Then we're going to arrive to my old friend, I don't know if you remember, Papyrus 39, from years 200 to 300, Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C., yes. That's where I saw my old friend, and you can actually click on the picture and see it right there. That was the episode number 1 of Padre Podcast, if you remember that. And if we keep scrolling, we're going to see the rest of the manuscripts. And we're going to arrive to Papyrus 52, dated between 125 to 175, John Rylands University in Manchester in the UK. And you can click on Papyrus 52 and see the real one. Beautiful picture in high definition, and we can click it. You can see a close-up of both sides of the text in Greek, and even a close-up of the actual manuscript, which is tiny, like I said, 2.5 to 3.5 inches in Greek on both sides. Isn't that crazy that you can have accessibility to all these manuscripts? The oldest fragment of the New Testament ever discovered. And you can just keep scrolling all the way to 141 because there are so many of them. Papyrus 66, which is the oldest complete copy of the Gospel of John. This is actually what inspired me to write my own manuscript of the Gospel of John. And so there it is. And you can keep scrolling down. And so you see all the New Testament papyri. And it tells you everything about it. The dates, the locations, the text. I am scrolling back now because I want to show you something local. Actually from the letters of St. Paul. You will see, because we have very important manuscripts of the letters of St. Paul here in Michigan. Yes, we are talking about Papyrus 45, and they are at the University of Michigan. Yes, in Ann Arbor. It's pretty wild. And you can access to the pictures. Papyrus 46. And you can actually see the pictures of the manuscripts, as you can see that I am showing right here. These have also been distributed in a printed form during the pandemic. There was a edition in printed form that I also purchased as part of my museum. And we're talking about manuscripts that go back to year 200, 300, the oldest copies of the letters of St. Paul. It's pretty wild that we still have these copies. And we continue scrolling down. So I think it's fascinating that of the 5,800 manuscripts that we have in Greek alone of the New Testament, that we can have access to the 141 oldest of them that are called papyri. And so they are all accessible digitally through Wikipedia. So we're grateful that we can have access to all of them through this virtual window that anyone can access at any particular moment, all the way to Papyrus 141. The other thing that I have been able to rescue here for us has been the actual book, facsimile of the book when Papyrus 52 was published in 1935. And it's amazing because if you think about it, this was just a few years before World War II. World War I had just happened and World War II was about to happen. And that's about the time when this very important fragment of the New Testament was discovered and published. And the pictures of the fragment are in black and white, of course, and the text of the publication tells us about how important this text, because the author, Colin Roberts, realized that he had in his hands the oldest fragment of the New Testament from the Gospel of John. What an amazing feeling he must have had when he discovered that. So this is everything that I wanted to share today about Papyrus 52, a piece of the puzzle. So next time that you play with puzzles and you underestimate one tiny piece, think twice, because you just never know. You can rebuild an entire puzzle from one tiny little piece, because that's exactly what they did from that one tiny little piece that we call Papyrus 52. From that small piece, we were able to reconstruct the entire Gospel of John. To this day, is the oldest fragment of the New Testament ever discovered. God bless you, and keep open your Bible, because there are so many mysteries and treasures that the Lord wants to reveal to you from it. God bless you. Have a wonderful day. Bye.